Anyway. All right, so there's we got a lot of materials going on because it's been a while since we did a show at all, right? And some big happenings in the gaming world. And for once, I guess it's not good, but there was a drama that was closer to us than most dramas in the past. And in addition to it being closer to us, I feel like I know everything there is that we need to say about it and can actually comment on it, unlike, say, the MagFest drama where we were like, we don't know what to make of this, right? We know exactly what to make of this drama. So we've already broken it down, I think, on our forum and our Discord and everywhere else. So if you weren't in those places, you might not have heard, but we'll just break it down again on our show. So there's no, questions roaming around, right? So to give you the background, there is a person named Adam Koebel, I think it's Koebel.
Yep.
Is a well-known tabletop RPG community person or former community person.
Former is a good way to put it.
Sure. Adam Koebel was one of the people who created the Dungeon World RPG, which is a game that I've played a few times and enjoyed the few times I played it, though it is not without problems. I don't think we've done an episode on it, right?
Because we played it at PAX. We're gonna play it like one more time and then do a show on it, and then COVID.
I don't think we need to do a show on it anymore. But anyway, it's a tabletop RPG that is powered by the Apocalypse. It is the same base system as Apocalypse Worlds, as many games have these days. But it's the setting is classic, dungeony, right? D&D setting. Adam Koebel was also a GM for one of the, I don't know which one, I could look it up, but it's one of those online, come watch people play RPGs on Twitch things, right? So he was a GM for one of those. And during one of those sessions for that RPG where he was the GM, he, without the consent of the players, right, there was a sexual assault scene in the game that was quite harrowing for the players.
When I link to the news itself links to like the stream at the point where this happens.
Obviously, content warning for watching that stream.
Yep.
Right?
I'll even quote what the article says. This clip is not for the faint of heart. Even if a description of a sexual assault doesn't bother you, the sheer mortifying train wreck in progress likely will. Because if you weren't familiar with the incident, that is sort of why Koebel is not really welcome in these spaces. This incident is probably way worse than you expected.
Right. So this is the main incident, which is why he was, quote, canceled, right? And basically became, he didn't face any actual real like consequences legally or anything like that, right? He didn't like lose a job or anything, but he was basically shunned, rightly so, by the community. He's like a pariah, right?
Yep. And you can read about all the details. Like, he didn't really issue an apology. He stayed silent for a while.
Did not seem sufficient, right? Et cetera. The usual. You've heard stories like this before, right? So that's Adam, right? I don't know Adam. It's possible I may have met.
Pretty sure we've met Adam a few times.
It's possible, but like before Googling him, I would not have recognized his face, right? If I've ever seen him, I didn't know, right? So that's the kind of level of relationship we have with that person, is I don't know them. So then, right, someone we know quite well, right, is Luke Crane, who has been someone who I guess was friend of the show status since the oldest of days.
Yep, one of our earliest big interviews. Like, we got really... Burning Wheel literally got us into indie RPGs.
Yep, some of, his works, we have lauded his works for over a decade, right? Yep. At the time we met Luke, he was just some guy making tabletop RPGs. And then over time, we worked together a few times on a few small things here and there. And then he became the head of games at Kickstarter and is now, I believe, the VP of community at Kickstarter.
Yep.
So he really leveled up in the world since, we met him. And our relationship with him, I don't know how it looks to a listener of the show, like how close it looks like we are to certain people, right? Because it's like someone I'm very close to, like say my mother,
Yeah.
doesn't get a lot of airtime on Geek Nights.
Maybe
right?
she
Luke
should.
Crane,
We should bring your mom and my mom on the show.
Luke Crane gets way more airtime, right, on Geek Nights. So to a listener, I worry, like, does it look like I'm closer to him than I am, right, based on that perception? But I would characterize our relationship as like mostly business acquaintancy, right? I communicate with him, at least in the past, I communicated with him when we were doing something together, right? Or I would say hi at a convention. I think the most recent thing we did together was we played a LARP with him at a PAX a year or two ago, maybe.
Yep, I've done a few minor things, but that you weren't involved in, but they were all they're really public things. They were just like consulting things.
Yeah, we play tested the Mouse Guard RPG and made a little video with a few years back.
Yep,
right?
back when we still did
not
like
the Mouse Guard RPG, the Mouse Guard board game,
Swords and
Swords
Strongholds.
and Stronghold, right? But that's it. Like I haven't spoken to Luke probably well over a year, right? It's not like I don't want people to think we're like a close friend, right? But it's still a person that I know and know well. All right, so what did Luke Crane do? So, as I mentioned on a previous Geek Nights Kickstarter, where Luke is a vice president, right, had the Zine Quest, the third year of Zine Quest, which is basically a time period where they encourage people to publish and kickstart tabletop RPG zines. And there are tons and tons of wonderful zines to choose from. So, of course, as you would expect, Luke Crane put a zine out, right? He put up a Kickstarter. And the Kickstarter was for the perfect RPG. And it was like a tongue-in-cheek kind of deal, right? Like, hey, we're going to make the perfect RPG zine, right? It'll be sort of a joke, right? There'll be some sort of message about how like the perfect RPG can't exist or something. It was obviously something along those lines. And there was a long list of, the usual suspects in the community who he got involved because Luke is a connected and prominent figure in the tabletop RPG community who was close to all the other people.
Yep, and a lot of them are people we are similar relationship with. We kind of know them. We talk shop semi-regularly, meet at conventions.
A lot of those people are people who have similar, they're the tabletop RPG community peeps, right? Yep. The same as you have like, the Anna Twitter peeps, right? There's sort of this community of people that we're not close friends with, but we're podcasty, nerdy friends with at conventions. We say hi, right? Yeah. We tweet at them occasionally, right? So, all those usual suspects were on the list of people. So when the Kickstarter came up, and he posted the thing, I didn't even read it, to be honest.
I skimmed it. I was like, oh, those are all people I like, and I just hit go.
I was like, oh, Luke put up the zine that I knew was going to be put up. And as with many other zines that went up from people I knew or, didn't know, I just looked at it. I said, oh, well, Luke's zine is up now. Click back, right? And then I closed the window and went on with my day. And then later in the day, I smelled through my internet nose a drama, right?
Yep.
And if you hadn't put the pieces together so far, this zine that Luke was putting together, which is an anthology of sorts with all those people involved, Adam Koval was on that list. And if I had seen that, I mean, this is a drama. The drama with Adam Koval, it's like, I don't know a lot of people or a lot of dramas, right? Like I said, Adam was a person I didn't know. I knew about that drama.
Yep.
Right? I knew about that one.
Like had the news not been what we're talking about, and I'd seen that, then what we would be talking about on Geek Nights right now would be like us looking into Adam being involved in this when we found out, and like asking Luke about it, asking people about it, like what's going on, why is he here?
So yeah, if I would have seen that name on there, I would have been like, whoa, what is going on here? But I didn't see that name on there. Other people did, and so they reacted as I did, as I would have, and said, whoa, what is going on here?
Now remember, this isn't necessarily the important reaction is not people like us who would have backed it saying, oh, whoa, what's going on? The people who were on the list didn't know he was involved in the project, and they all backed out because they did not want to be involved in a project that he's involved in for all the reasons you can imagine.
So now normally when you submit something to an anthology, right, poetry, any kind of anthology thing, comic anthology, right, it's not really that common practice to know who else the contributors are, right? It's just like, it's like, hey, I'm publishing an anthology, send in your works, and then I'll let you know if I'm going to include them or not and compensate you accordingly, right? I get you could ask who else is going to be in there or what else are you putting my artwork next to, but it's not. You typically don't necessarily do that. It's not like that standard a thing. But maybe it has to be now that this is maybe we recognize that maybe we should change that, right?
Yep.
So what happened is the other people who had Luke called a bunch of people, I assume, and was like, hey, you want to submit to my zine thing? Want to participate in this perfect RPG thing? People knowing Luke and his reputation and their relationship with him said yes. But then once they saw, after the Kickstarter went live, that Adam was on the list, they called Luke and said, nope, I'm out. I'm not, what's he doing there? I'm not, right? I'm not doing this. And then, right, there was a notice to everyone who backed the Kickstarter. I don't know, do we want to read it? You can read it online yourself. It's basically Luke's message to everyone, which is like, he said that, I'm going to paraphrase, you can read the exact words. He said people backed out, and he claims that some people were harassed to back out, which
has been pretty well refuted by all the people who did back out.
Yeah, at least I haven't seen anyone claim that they were harassed to back out, right? I've only seen personally Luke's claim that other people were harassed to back out.
I saw I saw at least 2 different people who had backed out publicly stating that they backed out because of Adam's involvement, not because of harassment.
Several people say that they backed out on their own volition, right? Regardless, Luke said that being unable to deliver the product as promised, he would just cancel the whole thing, the end, right?
That's where this gets extra problematic, because it's very clear that he could have removed Adam from the project, but the fact that he chose to end the project instead is a big red flag.
So some people were, I guess, since so many people focused on this point, even though I think it's not that big a deal and is kind of minor and conspiracy theory, I can't not bring it up.
I know what you're going to bring up. I got a screenshot of it here.
Many people pointed out that in the list of contributors on the Kickstarter happened to be oddly listed in reversed alphabetical order by first name, which puts Adam at the bottom. As if Luke was attempting to hide, or whoever made the Kickstarter, right? Yep. I don't know if Luke might have worked with someone to do it, right? If he did it all himself. Was intentionally trying to hide Adam's name at the bottom somewhere so you wouldn't notice something like that. That's not possible, but it doesn't really matter if his name was in the fine print or in the big print. What if Adam's name was huge? It doesn't change the problem that, Luke, definitely knows who Adam is way more than we do.
But the fact that he decided to include Adam in this project, knowing full well everyone in this entire tabletop industry knows.
If I know, Luke knows, he doesn't have an excuse, right? It means that he was, just regardless of anything that happened after, the fact that Adam was on the project, regardless of how he was listed, means that Luke Crane thinks it was okay for him to be there and was supporting him and, including him, a person who no one else finds it acceptable to include.
It would be very hard to believe that Luke was not aware that many of the other names on this list would not want to be involved in a project with Adam.
Yes, it is.
That is implausible.
No, it is very I cannot believe that, right? That Luke, it's basically, you cannot believe that Luke didn't know about the incident, or that Adam was persona non grata, or that right? He had to have known when he did this, which is a huge disappointment, right?
Yep.
It's like, I'm not disappointed that I'm not going to get this project. I'm disappointed in Luke as a person. Like, really, dude? Really?
Like, I actually debated because how much investigative journalism to do. Like, we ended up not reaching out to Luke for comment. Like, I'm not going to talk to Luke Crane anymore. And I'm waiting to see if he issues any sort of real public statement about this or not.
So that's the thing that I want to point out, right? So how much do I know Luke Crane as a person, having worked with him as a little bit over a large number of years, right? Not that much, right? I know a lot of his thoughts about games.
Yeah, I know a lot of his thoughts. We've spent a lot of time talking about games together as a group.
But it's like, I don't know him like as a person. Like, I don't know his family or his friends or, or anything. I'm not, close to him on like a human level. But one thing I do know, at least that about his personality, that I have gathered over the years, and I saw the last time I saw this the last time it really stood out to me was when Kickstarter was unionizing, and I saw other Kickstarter employees and non-Kickstarter employees all saying something, right? Positive or negative about that unionization effort, which I believe proved successful, if I'm not mistaken. And he didn't say a damn thing about it. Not one thing.
Now,
nothing.
On one hand, when someone has a job, like depending on their level, like they might not be allowed. Like there's a lot of things that could go on there.
Sure. As a vice president, I don't know about the rules. He might not even be in the union. He might be on the other side of that negotiating table, and therefore not able to say anything. He might have been pro or anti-union. I don't know.
Yep.
But that's not the point. The point is that was the latest example in a pattern of behavior that I have seen from Luke Crane as a whole, and noticed, like, the one thing I noticed about him as an acquaintance is that he is silent on many, many things.
Yep.
You know how bad people will go to people and say, stop talking about politics, only talk about games, right? And the kind of shitty people will say that, right? Luke is not one of those. I've never known him to be one of the shitty people who says that. He doesn't go to other people and say, stop talking about politics, only talk about games. At least I've never heard him say that.
Yep. I've never encountered that, and many of the people who are in his orbit will very often talk about politics.
Indeed. What he is he is a person who shuts up about politics and doesn't talk about anything but games. He follows those. He doesn't give those instructions to anyone else that I have seen, but what I have seen is him following those instructions. He just doesn't say, like, he's not the kind of person who will tweet Black Lives Matter. It's like, you don't have to be super active on social media if you don't want to. It's not like some requirement of the world, or, right? If you're not that kind of outspoken person, not everyone's an outspoken kind of person, right? But Luke Crane specifically is a prominent figure in a community, is a powerful figure at an important organization, right? Kickstarter, and is basically silent, as far as I can tell, on lots and lots of things. He only talks about his business, and he just shuts up about everything else, which leaves a lot of sort of, if you're not super close to him, I guess you have to be way closer to him than we are to know what he actually thinks about a lot of things. Right? Yep. It's like, I don't know what he thinks about a lot of, most things, because he just doesn't say anything.
It was a circle of people, like the tabletop RPG community is very liberal, very progressive as a whole. Obviously not everyone is, but like the community is really focused, and a lot of designers are focused on things like consent in games and access and diversity. And he existed in that space with all those people. And I think everyone sort of just assumed that he was like on board with everything. And he may be, we don't know. He's never really said much about it.
Yeah, it's like, he got the benefit of the doubt of me sort of assuming his stances on things, because he was an accepted and well-regarded member of a community of people who were outspoken on those things, right? So it's like, if you see, a whole bunch of a whole bunch of communists, right? Just straight up commies, right? And they're hanging out in a bar, and there's someone else who doesn't look like a communist. They're not handing out newspapers with.
Wait, not wearing. I'm wondering, like, what do you think a communist wears?
A Che Guevara beret or some shit.
Yeah.
They're not carrying around a copy of Marx or anything, right? They just look like a normal person. There is nothing to indicate to you that they are or are not communist. But they hang out in the communist bar. Their friends are communists. They're welcome there. They're high-fiving the communists. But they never are given the communist speech or doing communist things. You don't know how they vote, because that's secret, right? But you got to assume that person's a communist.
Yeah.
Right? Why are they hanging out in the commie bar? So that is Luke Crane, right? He was in that community, well accepted by these people. So I had just, even though he was been silent, I had taken that to mostly, understand that he is just not that kind of person who is outspoken on things like that. And you don't have to be. There's no requirement they had to be. But we met this latest, I was a little with the union thing, but obviously now extremely right?
Yeah. Well, this is, no one gets the benefit of the doubt if they behave this way. Like multiple steps along this specific project, They all require giving the benefit of the doubt, and you don't give the same person the benefit of the doubt a bunch of times in a row if doubts are piling up.
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't look like Luke Crane's gonna say anything else. He's going to continue his pattern. I'd be surprised if he said anything else.
So,
But he's gonna
including
continue
Adam
his
in this
pattern of
project,
violent complicity, right?
including Adam in the project, uh, appearing to hide this fact from the other people. Like, those are two things. And then third, not only not really apologizing for it, but basically trying to blame others for the failure of the project instead of like, even if he had apologized for including Adam and like continued the project without Adam, I'm not saying that would absolve him of any responsibility or guilt.
No, that would have still shown a huge misjudgment on
It
his
would have,
part,
but
even if he
misjudgment
corrected it.
followed by earnest apology and amends is better than fighting back plus silence.
Right, and that's the other thing is if Luke had just come out, right? So I don't know what he believes again because he's silent on everything mostly. But he would have come out and like defended his choice to include Adam, right? And said, and it's funny because Burning Wheel, it's like he'll sign Burning Wheel.
Fight for what you believe.
Right. Fight for what you believe, and yet he will not fight for what he believes, right? I don't even know what he believes. What are Luke Crane's beliefs? He's got a blank character sheet. At least as far as I can tell. All right. And I guess the GM knows what it says. But if he does believe something that we disagree with, if he believes that it would have been okay to include Adam.
Because it is not okay to include Adam.
It's not. But at least if you had the guts to just come out and present, your argument, at least then I would still be extremely disappointed, right? And it would still be like, right? But at least then you could have some respect that like, oh, okay, I see that you're wrong, and I can see what you are now, right? But to not say anything on top of the same disappointment, is an image of cowardice, right? So you've now not only lost like the approval, you've also lost some respect, right? Whereas at least, if he had defended it, I guess I still wouldn't respect him, but because he'd be wrong.
Yep.
But I could respect the lack of cowardice.
Well,
right? Say what you're gonna,
A non-apology plus silence is like the worst possible option of all the options.
Right.
But
and it's it's mostly because he is in such a position of prominence and power within the community, or at least maybe not anymore.
Yeah.
But I guess he still has his job, right? We haven't heard any news about that. So he's still that position, right? Comes with a great amount of responsibility.
And we're not the only ones who are like taken aghast by this. Like, go look at the list of people who contributed or were going to contribute, and go read. Like, I'm not gonna read all their comments, but many of them posted about this on Twitter. They were mostly as shocked as we were that Adam was involved in this project, and shocked at Luke's response.
Yeah, I mean, this was, I guess because Luke was silent to all of them as well, right? They didn't know, right?
But this actually raised an interesting.
If you had asked me the day before, right, I would have been like, no, there's no way he would ever do something like that, right? I couldn't imagine. It's like, no, there would have been no chance.
I was
of that.
very surprised to actually read this news and see what happened.
Yeah, it was quite shocking. Like,
but
it's like, well, okay, I guess you aren't what I thought you were.
But I bring up an anecdote because this was published in our forum and a few other places, but this is an incident that I was present for back in like 2010, which at the time didn't think about, but like I remember it clearly. The Whale Shark, a friend of ours who did a bunch of panels on heavy metal and things. This was a long time ago, but he gave a panel at a Kineticon where Luke happened to be, because we'd invited Luke to do some panels on his own, and there was a whole thing going on. And Luke attended this
11 years ago.
Yeah, this was a long time ago, but Luke attended this panel about metal, and the Whale Shark, when doing this panel, did a section at the end about white supremacists and Nazis in the metal community and how we need to aggressively remove them from our community. How like that is a problem.
That is still a problem, and it is still a fact.
Yep.
I'm worried every time I go and listen to like metal on Spotify. Like,
I always Google these bands, like, are they Nazis?
Right. It's like in other genres of music, right? It's like future funk. I don't usually have to like Google to see if the future funk band, future.
Of course, you'd be surprised. Like, I was a big fan of Pogo until I found out what a piece of shit he is.
Yeah, that's like I think Pogo might be like one of the few. The only thing I have to Google for now with DJs is like, are they coin people?
Yeah. But
But
Luke,
metal people, it's like, yeah, metal bands have good odds of being white supremacists relative to other genres. You have to search them out and see if it's luckily
Yeah.
Spotify does let you block bands, or I think you can actually report them and get them removed. I don't know.
but here's the thing.
Regardless.
We do know that Luke is into metal, and Luke attended this panel, and at the end of the panel, Luke approached the whale shark, who is also knows him, like we're all in the orbit together, and basically said, and this is nearly verbatim, like, I remember this, I was there, don't end on a down note like that. Sure, we have our bad boys, but they're not that common. And that, go back to that moment, really puts a sour taste in my mouth if there is an incident of him telling someone to not aggressively purge Nazis from the metal community and, like, don't bring up that down note in a panel about it. That, like, the plausible deniability. I'm not saying Luke's a Nazi. I'm saying his silence is a pattern that in retrospect is much more recognizable based on this current incident.
I think he definitely has like a personality of, silent complicity, right? He doesn't want to like, have conflict, or right? He just says nothing. He clearly believes something, but he doesn't want to like get into a flame war about it, right? Which is somewhat understandable, given the internet.
Yep.
But like he just avoids saying, any of his beliefs on anything other than, games, right?
Well, the extra weird thing about this is that Luke and Adam, before the incident, were both pretty well respected for, like, their games involved a lot of like consent and diversity.
I enjoy all the games that they have made, right?
But in terms of like mechanically including consent, mechanically like enforcing things, like allowing people to role play in a safe space, like that was something that previous to the incident with Adam, I associated with Adam, and previous to this, I associated with Luke. And it's interesting that even though these ideas are expressed in their works, they did not appear to be expressed in their real lives.
So even people like us who may, be out here saying all these things, right? You got to keep an eye on us too.
Yeah.
Right? Make sure that, of course, we won't have the silent problem.
Yeah. Haven't I been on Twitter for the last week telling people that NFTs are bullshit and Bitcoin is literally evil?
Yeah. You always know where we stand, but
we might be wrong, but we're not going to hide it.
It is entirely possible that we will go down a dark road, right?
Yeah.
And surprise you with hidden bad takes on things at some point in the future. It's not impossible. I'm working hard to make sure that doesn't happen.
You also might run into some old bad takes. I mean, GeekNights has been around since 2005.
GeekNights, I'm sure you can find plenty to ruin us on. But I would probably agree with you. Odds are 2021 Scott, if you pulled up a 2007 Scott podcast, right, found me saying something shitty, you say, wow, you said something shitty, I'd be like, yeah, I sure did.
Yeah, I remember there's one episode in particular I was thinking about where we were talking about how unions in our fields of work didn't make sense, and we doubled down on that back then.
I mean, I can see, I'd probably agree with some of the individual points I made, but not the overall. I'd probably be like, yeah, let's make a union and not have a shitty one.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, you can read, like, I'll link to this Reddit post that kind of explains this whole situation in extreme detail. And honestly, like I said, we didn't reach out to Luke. He'll say something publicly or he won't. Like,
I have not gotten involved in any of the things happening. I heard what everyone had to say. I listened, and then I said just now what I know and what I think about it. And that's it. There's nothing else. I think it's going to be the end right there. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to, I would be surprised if there was a further development on this front.
I can say that one thing that I am not going to do is we had been talking until COVID kind of messed everything up about trying to do a Burning Con of some kind, like bring that back. That is not happening.
We've been talking about that on and off for quite a long time, right?
Yep.
Somehow it's like, because Burning Con was a con that died, and we were trying to start a small con, and it was sort of like, we've always been like, hey, let's, we can get all these things going together. It's never good.
If we do that, it's going to be entirely on our own at this point.
Yeah.
So So to turn this to a positive note, I think what we want to talk about briefly is a bunch of Kickstarters, some of which are zines that are super good that you should check out, that are not a problem.
Yeah. Right. So you missed out on the perfect RPG, or everyone did, right? So I've kickstarted quite a few zine and non-zine RPGs. Some of these may have ended. But regardless, I'm going to talk about all these really quickly, right? So the first one, is this one over? This one's not over yet. It's called Our Traveling Home by Ash Kreider. This is basically Howl's Moving Castle, the RPG, right? So there's this castle that moves around, Our Traveling Home.
Yep. I see a bird lady, a red panda.
Yeah, you definitely have, a non-typical family, right? Living in this home, traveling around, right?
A game about queer romance, found family, and finding healing through belonging, inspired by the works of Studio Ghibli.
Yes. So if that doesn't sell you on the RPG, I don't know what kind of nerd you are. Okay. The next one, is this still available? I don't know. It will only be funded, reaches its goal by 23 days to go. Okay. Coyote and Crow, the role-playing game, right? So we're always talking about, RPGs and how racist and colonial they are, right? And it's like, well, show me the RPG that's not. Well, here it is. It's Coyote and Crow. It's a game about Native Americans made by Native Americans.
An alternate future of the Americas where colonization never occurred. Instead, advanced civilizations arose over hundreds of years after a massive climate disaster, etc. This looks pretty cool.
The thing that sold me on this game, which sells me on a lot of games and books, by the way, was the map, which is an upside-down North America.
Yep.
With outlines of different, territories on it, right? And I was like, oh, that alone, like they could have just put that picture up and said, there is a game associated with this JPEG. Would you like to pay money for it? And I would have said, yes, here's my money. So Coyote and Crow, excellent, right?
We got
so
oh yeah, more to say?
Oh, Wizard's Grimoire, right?
That's the one I was bringing up. This is an updated Wizard's Grimoire.
Yeah, so we did a show on Wizard's Grimoire by Vincent Baker. I don't think you can kickstart this anymore. I think it ended, but you can probably still get it eventually, right? But yeah,
I backed it. Maybe I'll play it with some people in the GeekNights Discord.
Yeah, it's being updated in zine form. You can get your hands on it, I guess, when this launches, because the backing period is over. Now, here's the interesting thing. There's two of these I want to point out. After Wizard's Grimoire, I got really turned on to the solo RPG biz, right? Because it's like, hey, you get your solo RPG on, you don't need to worry about arranging anything with other people so much, right?
Yep.
So here's two really good-looking solo RPGs that I'm going to try. One of them is The Last Will and Testament of Gideon Blythe, a keepsake game about a family legend, lineage, and the burden of destiny for Zine Quest 3 by Gideon Shim. It is a solo RPG, but you're like producing this, like you get yourself a blank Moleskine and some artifacts, and it's almost like you're scrapbooking and making the story at the same time, given, the ephemera that come with the game. And if you pay enough money, you can, it'll include a lot of ephemera, fabrics, scraps, artifacts, right?
Yep. Looks like there's going to be, I guess, an app version 2.
Ooh, that'll be really interesting.
Mobile only zine. Players follow screen friendly directions to create the family album. So there's a bunch of ways to interact with this.
Right. So it's like you're someone who has found this album, but you're also creating the album as you play. And it's a solo RPG. You can just do this by yourself. It's, I guess, you just.
This looks very experimental and cool. Like one of them, like a mechanic is, there's an example of play they show in the Kickstarter. To figure out the terminal fate of a character's beloved, there's a bunch of descendant cards, and you black out all but one word on them, and that determines the fate of some characters.
Yep. So the last one, very similar vein to the previous one, is called Amending, right? A space mending, by Xingyin Kor. I hope I pronounced their name correctly.
Perhaps that is a play on words.
That's the person's name.
No, I'm saying amending.
Oh, yes.
Amending.
Amending. This is also a solo RPG where you get a cloth map, right? And you literally sew onto the map the path you are taking with a needle and thread. You travel around the map. And when things happen, so in the example here, right, there's a spot where the person, I guess, must have uncovered like some gems or something, and they sewed a bunch of like little blue sparkly dots into that area of the map, right? So obviously it's not a difficult sewing project, right? You just sort of, needle in, needle out kind of situation, right? You can do this whether you are amazing at sewing or have never sewed in your life. But it's like you're creating an artifact and also telling a story and playing a solo RPG at the same time. Just the idea of that is worth my money. And then they got a photo. If that doesn't sell you on it, they got a photo of somebody wearing their map as like a scarf.
Nice.
And it's like, if that, how can you, that's like guaranteed RPG sales right there. And you can play this entirely by yourself, right? So if you have no friends who want to play RPGs with you, or they're not reliable as RPG people are, you can kickstart this and on your own tell a story and create a beautiful keepsake for yourself. So all these, and more A+ RPGs to kickstart that aren't the perfect RPG, which isn't happening.
And one last little quick news before we get into the main bit and talk about Moon Hunters. So Roll20 is a pretty good website that doesn't just support Dungeons and Dragons, like it supports other RPGs too. Like Blades in the Dark is directly supported in there. So I'm using Roll20 now. I never really used it before. In fact, right after this GeekNights recording, I'm going to go play Blades in the Dark. You might be thinking, well, with COVID happening and everyone's stuck at home, are a lot of people playing role-playing games online? So previous to COVID, yes, Roll20 had about 5 million accounts on the platform.
I always question that when people say how many accounts they have, because how many are bots? How many are using their accounts? I think like I might have an account. When have I used it? I don't remember. It must have been years ago, if I even have one, right? So I always want to know the active users, like in the past week. That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But assuming you use that metric, during COVID, they have added 3 million new users to Roll20.
Even if those aren't all active users in the past week, that you cannot deny that a lot more people are using Roll20 than before.
And I can say that during the early days of COVID, like Roll20 would have some performance issues because so many people were using it at the same time.
Or their servers are so weak.
Yeah, but I think there is enough evidence that there was indeed an explosion of online role-playing. Because Roll20 is just one way people do this. A lot of people just play RPGs by just being in a Discord. Just doing a Zoom call. So it'll be interesting to see what I'm really curious about, because I don't know what's going to happen. What will the role-playing landscape look like in a post-COVID world? Because I think a lot of people started role-playing who previously didn't because they were stuck at home, had more free time, or were bored and started doing it online. Will this translate to more people playing in person? Will this translate to more online groups existing even post-COVID because it's easier to find people you want to play with instead of whoever happens to be at your local game store? Like, this is going to be a very interesting space to watch over the next 18 months.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But, even if people aren't playing, the best RPGs, it's better than no RPGs.
Yep.
Right? So more RPG playing is good.
But anyway, things of the day. So check this out. This is literally the best thing I've seen on the internet today. It was posted today. It's my thing of the day. It is a 1 and 30-second long video that appears to be done in one shot. And it is just the camera on a drone flying into a bowling alley. And it is beautiful and amazing. And you will be surprised at 2 different points in this video. Watch it all the way to the end.
Yeah, I was. This is quite an excellent, short film here.
Yeah,
that I hadn't seen until for once I hadn't seen it until Rim sent it to me. I had some questions about it, like how the heck did they do that?
But that's it. There are two exact moments in this video where you will think, "Whoa, I didn't expect that."
Yeah, and also the way the people were involved, really excellent work. Big fan. All right, so I think I saw this from someone in our forum, shared this with the class, and I believe that's where I found it originally. So what this is there is a drummer that I had not heard of previously, but is an excellent drummer named Larnell Lewis. And Larnell is not someone who is a drummer in the metal genre, right? Metal has come up again on our podcast. However, Larnell here in this video on YouTube listens to the very famous song, right? Enter Sandman by Metallica. For
If you don't know that song, like you've definitely heard it, even if you don't
if
realize.
you're listening to this podcast, you know that song. It's like
if you're as old as us,
they definitely heard that song. Anyway, but Larnell claims to have never heard that song before.
sure.
Larnell listens to the song, and basically I think it's 2 tries, but regardless of how many, 1 or 2 tries doesn't matter. It's impressive nonetheless, right? Just heard the song, doesn't have like, music or, sheet music or anything, right? And then plays the drums as if, he's on stage and, the rest of Metallica, except for the drummer is there and he's got to fill in.
The YouTube comments on this video are great. Why did it take YouTube 6 days to recommend this to me? Up next, Tool. Let's see what he makes of that. Meanwhile, Lars has been playing this for 30 years and still can't get it right.
So yeah, this is amazing to see someone who not only there's plenty of people in the world who are talented at various musical instruments, but it is an even smaller subset of those people who can just like, you might find someone who's like amazing at, I don't know, violin. And then if you were to just play for them once, like a recording of a brand new violin piece, would, to hear it, memorize it, be able to play the whole thing back to you in 1 or 2 tries, doesn't even matter, right? That is incredible. And so,
yeah, like in music theory classes, like back when I was serious about music, I got to the point where I could listen to 1 note being played at a time on a piano for like a minute and transcribe it as I went and then play it back. 1 note at a time, very slowly over the course of like 30 to 40 seconds was the best I could muster.
This is well worth all nearly 20 minutes of your time to watch this video.
It's good. In the meta moment, the only thing we can talk about in the meta moment is that Scott sent me an image, and that image was of the Tale of Genji.
That's right. Last night, I basically, sometime around 9 something, I was like, I really don't have anything else to do right now, but it's kind of too early to go in bed, and I kind of ran out of video games, I don't, what should I do? And I said, I guess I'm in like a reading mood.
Wow.
It's like, well, if I'm in a reading mood, I guess I have to read that book, don't I?
Yep.
And
which means
I did.
I have to read that book.
I did not finish the chapter I was in, but I got a significant portion of the way through it before my eyes would not stay open. And I will probably do the same thing tonight after I'm done with all my biz here. So it'll be a while. The Tale of Genji, the first novel ever written by a human being that we know of, is not a short book by any stretch. But I will complete reading it within my lifetime sometime in the coming weeks, months, who knows?
So the GeekNights book club is afoot again. So if you start reading now, you'll be able to follow along because, we'll do like we normally did during book clubs is we'll chat a little bit during the meta moment about things that have happened in the book.
All I'm going to say is I feel like I could write like a 1-paragraph summary of each chapter of
I'm feeling that too.
And then that would just you could just replace the whole book with that and it would be fine. But anyway, we'll see. So yeah, Tale of Genji is still the book club book. I'm looking forward to finishing it so we can do a different book club book. I don't care what the hell Rim picks next time. You pick like...
See, but again, the problem is not the book because it's not, I don't want to read the Tale of Genji. It's I'm not reading fucking any fiction right now. I'm reading all nonfiction.
I'm just saying there's nothing, the book is not the problem. It's simply the amount of time we've been on it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like to just be on a different book, right? The context in which we are reading it, right? If I had just been reading it on my own and not for this book club, and it had been just a selection for a year, 2 year, I don't know when we selected it.
I will say I do know what my book selection will be. I've already decided.
Good. All right. I got for future selections, I got so many. but I'm probably going to pick ones that are shorter and faster.
I was about to say, just be careful, because if you cross me, the Count of Monte Cristo is coming out of the woodwork.
Count of Monte Cristo, I'll take your Count of Monte Cristo, whatever, right? As long as, see, it's regardless of the book, Count of Monte Cristo, as long as we don't take 2 years to read it, right? It'll be okay.
I mean, I powered through the Count of Monte Cristo in like a month and a half.
Okay. All right.
I was actually really into it. I was reading it at this breakneck pace.
No, I mean, I was reading Tale of Genji last night as fast as I read books. So,
Yeah. All right, let's get right into it, because we went on for a while here, but I don't think we have to talk forever about this. Moon Hunters is a game that we want to talk about, one, because we played it recently, even though it's from 2016. But two, it is out on the Switch for like $15. Like, it's out. But right now, like literally right now, and until March 15th, so you've got a week, it is on sale on Steam. So instead of $14.99 on Steam, this game is $2.24. This game, don't even listen to the review. It's $2.24. Just buy it.
I found this game, which is developed by Kit Fox Games, in my Steam library, and I didn't know where it came from.
That happens to me a lot lately.
It was a co-op multiplayer game that I could play with friends, and I was with friends online looking for a co-op game to play together. And most of the Steam, the PC games that are online, real time, play together with Steam Play Together or with internet functionality, tend to be action RPGs or sort of, Smash TV, twin stick, same kind of deal, right? Games like Enter the Gungeon, right? Or I've been playing with our friend Scott Johnson. I've been playing Children of Morta is another one in the same sort of category, right? So this one, Moon Hunters, I finally figured out where I got it from. It was from on itch.io. There was a Black Lives Matter support bundle, and the game was included in that.
Oh, that explains it.
And that is why I have a copy of that game. So, but yeah, it's on super sale on Steam right now. It's called Moon Hunters. And in this game, you are literal moon hunters.
Yep, the moon's gone. Go find it. You've got 5 days.
The sun goes down and the moon does not come up. And it is a clear sky and the moon should be there because you are people of the moon religion, right? And you know where the moon is and it doesn't show up and you're like, oh shit.
Yep. And then your village is like, all right,
Princess Luna situation going on.
Yep. And your village is like, go fucking find the moon before we all die.
Yeah, like you're the strongest people in our village, and you can choose from 4 different, or I guess several different like groups. We're like the Wolf Clan, different clans, right? And it's like, yeah, where's the moon? Go and find it, right? You have this many days to find the moon before like the world is ruined.
It's just 5 days. You know what it reminds me of? Like superficially, like right from the start. What was it? 5 Second Hero?
Half Minute Hero?
Half Minute Hero? That's what. Yeah, I haven't played the game in so long.
Yeah.
God, we had that on what, the
Wii?
Yep. But in this game, there's a lot of interesting, unique stuff this game is doing. But the gist of it is, you start with these characters, you play through the game, you don't find the moon, and the world ends probably. But then
we didn't find the moon, but we probably could if we played it more.
But when you play it again, some of the things that you had learned from the previous time change the world a little bit, and now you can explore the world a little more. There's more options. There's more history. So it's sort of like a procedurally generated roguelike in a sense.
It's very much in line with what you have the trend of the times, where it's a roguelike game where each time you play, it's a completely different, or not completely, but very different experience where things have been randomized and procedurally shuffled in various ways. But also, every time you play, you carry a bit of statefulness over to your next play, right? Rogue Legacy did this, where you level up your guy.
Hades is like the hottest game that does this.
Hades, exactly. Every play of Hades is some things are shuffled, right? You fight a different boss at the end of level 1. You play with a different weapon. But of course, in your second play of Hades, you've upgraded things, right? Same pattern here in Moon Hunters. The thing I think what separates Moon Hunters apart is really just the storytelling aspect here in this game.
Which is interesting. When you read about this game, it is described on their page as, quote, Moon Hunters, the personality test RPG.
Yeah, it's somewhat an apt description, right? Is that while a lot of the gameplay is that sort of twin stick action RPG, right? Move and then shoot bad guys until their health bar goes down, kind of gameplay, that you see so often.
That's the least interesting part of this game.
It's actually like it's that part of the game is just kind of right? It's like typical. It's not bad, but it's not great. It's just run of the mill for that genre, right? The rest of the game is super unique and interesting. So, first of all, when you walk around towns and talk to people, right? There'll be like some dialogue choices of like, what do we tell this person?
Yep.
Right? And every player, because you're playing co-op with up to 4 people, right? Will choose one of the choices. You all choose.
You vote.
You might choose this. Yeah, you vote. You might choose the same thing. You might choose different things. And if there's a tie, whoever in your party has the highest leadership score is the leader and gets the tie-breaking vote.
These are real fun. Like right away, like we started playing this game. As soon as we realized we were voting on what to say to someone, someone locked in their vote and it got really funny and we were hooked.
Yeah, you can't unlock your vote. So it's like everyone locks in. If you lock in first, that was your choice to lock in first, right? You don't have to. Yeah, that was real fun. And then there's real consequences. And this is where the personality test part comes in. For example, we chose, I think, what did we choose when we played most recently? Avenge on one of the choices.
Yep.
Right? And then we both got points in Vengeful as like our Vengeful stat like increased. And you're saying like, okay, well, that's neat. What does Vengeful stat actually mean? Well, for example, another stat was Foolish, right? So we didn't have any points in Foolish. We were not fools.
Yep.
We encountered someone along our adventure, and the game told us, yeah, this guy would have fought you if he thought you were more foolish. But since we weren't, he thought that we were, intelligent people, and therefore he didn't mess with us.
In one of the towns, there's these old people just talking to each other. And if you go over and try to listen to them, it tells you, like, unfortunately, you don't have the patience to listen to this crap.
And it's like patience is highlighted. So it's like, if we want to hear what the old people are saying, we have to go somewhere else and do something patient to get patient stat up. And then we can go to the old people and hear what they're saying.
Yep. So all these decisions you make as a group and individually, we'll get to that in a second along the way, define your characters, which define how they interact with the world. And then at the very end of the game, regardless of if you find the moon and save the world, I don't actually know if you can find the moon. We haven't beaten it. But you almost get this history. Like it almost, those 80s movies where it's like the credits show like what happened to everybody. Like Jojo blew up in the war and Doc became a lawyer and then got shot. Like something like that. You kind of get that for your character. Like it tells you the story of your character. Like based on the decisions you made, how did you end up?
Mm-hmm. Now, along your way, where you're doing this sort of, average run-of-the-mill action RPG gameplay where you have different classes and a few different abilities, teleport, range, melee, that sort of stuff, right? You will have to choose, right, where you're going to go next in a very Slay the Spire kind of style, right? You start off in your home village and the moon disappears. But then it's like, okay, where do you go next? Do you go over to that cave?
Yep, you head over to the Sun Cult, which is probably the culprit, but maybe
you're
not.
The moon group. You're moon people, moon hunters, right? What happened to the moon? You're pretty sure those evil Sun Cult guys did something, right? So do you go over to the Sun Cult and like take it to the man and say, hey, what'd you do with the moon, jerks?
Yep.
Or do
we did that the first time. We went over and fucked the Sun Cult up.
Yeah, we sure did. I think we unlocked the Sun Cult guy as like a playable character, even
something like that.
Something like that.
That guy though, anyway.
There's something interesting going on there. But yeah, there's all sorts of interesting characters you meet. Like a lot of games will sort of like Slay the Spire, for example. You have a question mark and then you'll have a fight and they're clearly separate. Here, it's like every area you go in, even if it's just mostly a town, might have a couple guys to fight, right?
Yeah.
And even an area where you are fighting lots and lots of guys with several bosses, like a big battle area, there'll be several people to talk to have dialogue with, to get quests from, to learn things from.
Yep.
And
you got to pay attention, like
in it, all kinds of stuff.
If you don't pay attention to what people are saying and like try to solve the puzzle, like you got to go to the places that make sense for what you're actually trying to accomplish. And you can just go off on wild goose chases, like go somewhere that doesn't really matter, or you can pay attention or go somewhere interesting. You can go do something completely different from trying to find the moon and see how that turns out. But all those places also let you unlock more of the game. Like once you find a type of food, now that type of food is always available. So like in the game we just played, we met this bird lady, and she seems important, but she doesn't want to talk to us unless we make her a fish sandwich. So if we ever get fish, we're going to try to go back to that place in a future playthrough and see if we can get this bird lady to talk to us.
Exactly. And then, of course, on the map, it's like, oh, well, there's a place that has fishing. Maybe we should go to that place and try to fish and then get the recipe for the fish sandwich for cooking. And then the recipe will be available on future playthroughs and so on and so forth. So I think like I've said a bunch of times, the combat action part of the game is kind of but what I think the game gives you that's sort of new and unique is sort of, you get the stat building visual novel action, right? That you would normally see in like a Tokimeki Memorial almost, right?
But better designed, simply because it tells you what you needed to interact with the thing.
Exactly. But also, not only do you get that, you get to play through it quickly. Playing Tokimeki Memorial takes a long time, right? Even playing some of the other like stat building visual novels like takes a while, right? They're not quick games. Here you can play through a playthrough in a sitting with your friends. I think it would actually be best at like a party with 4 people, right? You could play through and it's like, okay, we did that. And then you can learn so much and get another playthrough. And you can really, if one playthrough of a game takes so long, it's like that replay using what you learned from the first time might never happen. Here, you can iterate quickly and really explore all the space available in a shorter amount of time, or you're more likely to re-explore.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, right, so you've got the shorter stat building visual novel with greater replay, and then you've got the multiplayer aspect, right, where you're playing it together. When you play Tokimeki Memorial together or some other stat building visual novel, it's everyone yelling at each other, and you're outside the game in the meta picking your choices. Right?
But here, if Scott's like, we should share our water with this guy, and all the rest of us are like, nope, fuck him, and we vote to deny him water, that's what we're doing.
You're literally all together doing it at the same time. And then sometimes you're doing that voting, but sometimes you're not. You still have the individual play, right? So at the end of each day in the game, like I said, the game is 5 days long, you camp. And when you camp, each player individually chooses what they're going to do when they camp at night.
I love that part.
This is a really fun part of the game, right? So you're presented with a screen that reminds me a lot of Golden Axe with the campfire. And you pick a spot, and some of the spots tell you straight up, like, this is going to increase these stats for you, right? So maybe you want to increase leadership, so you pick a certain thing that increases leadership so you can become the leader. Or maybe you're a melee character, you pick the thing that will increase your strength. And then cooking, you can pick a recipe, and then stuff happens when you pick a recipe, right?
Yep. And often when you pick something independent of that stat boost, you'll get your own, like, I'm keeping watch while Scott's sleeping. I have to deal with the situation by myself and answer a question that no one else gets to vote, just me.
You will get some sort of story encounter often, I guess not always, but very often while you're doing your camping activity, and get to do an individual choice for your character that is a lot of fun. So,
and I will say these choices, like another game this evokes in my mind is Arabian Nights or 1001, like that are like the game, because the choices are vague and simple. Like, do I share or deny the thing? Do I flirt or distract? Like, you get very different and vague options, and the story kind of just follows them.
Yep. And they are not the sort of blatant black and white sort of moral choices you get in like a Fallout kind of game, where it's like, do I kill the guy, steal from the guy, or try to persuade the guy, or just...
Well, like we found this skull at like the skull shrine, and the options it gave us were pray or study.
Yeah, it's like I prayed because I want to pray to the awesome skull.
Yeah,
right?
All hail Zommelguster.
But neither one of those is necessarily good, bad, wrong, right? They're all interesting choices that you're going to choose probably according to your personality in this personality test RPG, right? What you choose in the choice of pray or study to the skull says stuff about who you are, the real person, right? So I would recommend this game, not necessarily for everybody. I would say if you have, it's okay with just two people. If you got at least one other person, if you're going to play it alone, I think you're going to lose a lot of the effect of it. Not all of it. You can play it alone if you want.
But I think 3 or 4, this game shines the most.
3 or 4, it shines a lot. 2 is still good. I think it's worth playing with 2 if that's all you can muster. But if you can get people to play this and play repeat plays of it, it is well worth the ridiculously low price it is on Steam right now.
$2.24.
$2. Damn, that is low.
Now, right now, we had trouble getting the online play that's built into work, but the game works 100% fine with Steam Remote Play.
Yes, so technology-wise, their game does have online play built in. I don't know if the online play on the Switch works, because I obviously did not buy it on Switch. It might or might not work.
It claims to have online support on the Switch.
Yes, on PC, we could not get the online functionality to work, but using Steam Remote Play together, it worked perfectly fine. On the main menu, you have some trouble because only one person can sort of control the main menu, and it might not be the person whose computer is playing the game.
It ended up being me, but we sorted that out, and then the game was fine.
Once you're in the game, then it will recognize everyone's controller, and you all join, and it'll work. I did have trouble with it one time, but I didn't have trouble with it just recently, so it worked.
Yeah.
But if you're playing locally and you just have 4 friends in your house post-COVID,
that would be the best.
And you have 4 controllers, then you're going to have a real good time. You won't have any technological issues with this game whatsoever. It'll work perfectly. So yeah, Moon Hunters, terrific use of $2.
Yep.
For sure.
It surprised me. It was way more than I expected, and I want to keep playing it.
Yeah, having played a lot, I guess not a lot, but quite a handful of these co-op action RPG things, in COVID times, because that's the most common co-op game you're going to see on Steam. This one is definitely one of the better ones that will get more play, despite the fact that, parts of it are meh. The parts of it that are unique are so unique and interesting that it is, worth my time.
Yep, you're not going to find another game like this yet.
$2.
$2, and not $2 and less than a quarter, to be fair.
Yeah.
Plus tax, so another nickel or so.
Sure. I mean, that's the kind of game, you can go on itch.io and buy, I don't know what the price is on itch.io, but it's you can, it's probably, I imagine, pay what you want, because that's what itch.io does for a lot of things, right?
Yep.
So, A+.